Morning, everyone. Morning. Special day, AGM. Great to see such a good attendance. Do we have any visitors? We've obviously got a lot of guests, but do we have any visitors that anyone wants to introduce? No, okay. What about birthdays? Bruce?
21.
Yes, on the 4th of March I was 3/4 of a century.
Well done, well done. Congratulations to our wonderful newsletter, webmaster, etc. Yep.
A lot of celebrations all over Australia yesterday. There was the Adelaide Cup.
Yes. And I didn't back the winner.
Canberra Day. There was the 8 Hours Day in Tasmania, Labor Day in Victoria, as well as Moomba Day. And it was my 91st birthday.
Ian, you saved the best till last. The best till last. I'm going to ask the Vice President to call the roll because we need to make sure we've got a quorum. We obviously have, but Mr. Vice President, would you like to call the roll?
Yes, certainly, Mr. President. All right, and away we go. Robert Adams.
Apology.
Thank you. Dr. Peter Bedford.
Here, but I'll be an apology next month.
Thank you. Noel Benton. We haven't seen Noel for a while. Bert Berryman.
Yes.
The 75-year-old Bruce Bazan.
I think so.
Hector Davis.
Apology.
Thank you. Michael Doherty.
I think he's here.
No. Yeah. Lynn Edwards.
Yes.
Thank you, Lynn. Robert Erbacher.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robert. Alan Evans.
Present. I'm here.
Brian Fitt.
Present.
Nick Francis.
I'm here.
Noel Griffith.
Sir.
Stuart Hall.
Apology.
Thanks, David. Frank Henning.
Present.
Pole position. Bob Hill.
Present.
Detlef Hinks.
Yeah.
John Horsfall.
Apology.
Thank you. Reg Jackson.
Here.
David Jones is here. Welcome, Joe Landsberg.
Yeah, thank you.
And Diana Landsberg as well. David Lunn.
Here.
Jerry Mazzoletti. Brian McMahon.
Brian might come later.
Thank you. John Metcalf.
Yeah.
Gary Nervo.
Apology.
Yeah. Gary Papworth.
Here.
John Parry Jones.
Apology.
Max Pearce.
Apology.
Hold on, apology, sorry.
Graham Ratton.
Yep.
Kevin Ryan.
Yes.
Will Semler.
Apology.
Ron Speechley.
Yeah.
Colin Stiles.
Yeah.
David Taylor.
Apology.
Les Sterling.
Yeah, my birthday's also on St Patrick's Day too.
How many, Les?
71.
Keith Tupper.
Present.
Livio Turicek. Andrew Walsh.
Present.
Reverend Ian Williamson.
Yes, sir.
91, not out. That completes the roll call, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We'll now open the AGM for the 14th of March 2023, and I welcome members and guests to this AGM. Apologies have already been recorded, and having regard to the roll call, I can confirm that a quorum of members is present so that we can proceed with the AGM. The minutes of the 2022 AGM have previously been provided with the newsletter and will be taken as read. Are there any changes or amendments that anyone wants to raise? All right, can I have a motion that they be adopted? Yes, Gary Papworth move and Robert Urbacher second. All in favour? Carried. There's no business arising from the minutes that we need to deal with. Mr. Secretary, I don't understand that there's been any correspondence relating to this AGM.
True.
Correct? Presentation of the annual report. This report has been prepared by our Secretary and we thank him for his work on that on behalf of the committee, and has previously been provided with the February newsletter. It will be taken as read, and I'd like a motion that it be received. Yes, Graham Bratton, and seconded Colin Stiles. All those in favour? Thank you. I will ask some of our Committee of Management who are contributors to the annual report. Their work is obviously part of it, and I'll start with our Secretary, Colin, who's done a tremendous job for us as Secretary over the last year. Colin, is there anything that you want to add to what's in the report or that you want to amplify?
Not really, except I think the committee's been well run by you, and I think the idea of activities and camaraderie, we're heading in the right direction. Both of those are good, and also I'd very much like to thank Bruce Bazant for introducing us to the new age.
Yeah. Thanks, Colin. David Lunn, would you like to give us a report in relation to your work as Almoner and what a magnificent job that David does?
But I'll stand here and hope I can be heard.
Yes, you can. Yes.
Before I present my annual report, there are two matters I want to mention. The first is that recently, last week, I was privileged to be invited to a lunch for a small group to celebrate Ron Speechley's 90th birthday, which actually did occur in December. However, one of the attendees there was Hec Davis, who we hadn't seen for a long time, quite frail, on a frame, immobile, and sad to see. And Hec was accompanied by a lady called Lois, who's a friend, whom we know in musical circles around Banyule, and how she dropped Ron Hec off at the restaurant in Glenferrie Road, right on a tram stop, and then dropped in there, went and parked and then came back. I don't know how that happened, but anyway it did. And the same goes for Jade, who was Ron Speechley's carer. She did the same sort of job. She organised the venue and the menu and us, and all power to her as well. The second thing I want to mention is that I had a call on Sunday from John Horsfall, a distressing and somewhat emotional call. John not doing well. He had surgery for a prolapse disc, which has been partially successful. He has Parkinson's disease and is quite immobile and is about to go into respite care, just not doing well at home at all. He feels that this will probably be a permanent thing and he won't be able to come to Probus meetings anymore. I hope he's wrong, but he did ask me to express his gratitude to Probus and its members. He came into Probus at a difficult time in his personal life and has never ceased to express gratitude to me for recruiting him and for the membership of this club. So we will see what happens about John. Now we come to the annual report, and as you know, I was out of action for the last 6 months of 2022, and I want to thank members who kind of deputised, particularly Graham Ratton and Gary Papworth. I do thank them very much, among other members. Now, during this time, we lost 3 fine members of the club. Len Jeanette, who reached his 100th century, and Bob Murdoch, who wasn't far behind, and then John Philp, who was, his death was very sad. He was comparatively younger and had a short illness, which surprised us. Now we have 2 non-active members. That would be Rodney Abad and Bill Lewis. I haven't talked to Bill for a while, but I do keep in touch with Beryl quite a bit. And next we have a list of people who are unable to attend meetings. So I'll mention their names. We have Heck Davis, Stuart Hall, Paul Flanagan, Max Pearce and Gary Nervo. And we miss them, and we wish they were able to come to meetings, but sadly they're not. The last thing I want to do is thank the membership for electing me again. It's a pleasure. And I thank my son too, Matthew, who does the computer work for me, because I can't use that anymore. I wish we have a very good year coming up. Thank you.
Thanks, David, and of course our thanks to the work that you do in responding to our members and supporting them and giving us updates as to how they're travelling. It's an absolutely critical role, and it's really at the heart of this club. And we're very, very fortunate to have someone like yourself who undertakes that responsibility. And hopefully, as we move along the technology, frame, we might be able to at least assist some of our members who can't make it physically to be able to pick up our meetings online. That's something that we're certainly working on, and of course we've got the online arrangement going today with the recording of this meeting, which Bruce has been able to set up, but we're looking to take it further in the coming year. Gary, would you like to...
I'll do it after if you like, because I've only got to read what I've got to do. I'd just like to thank everybody over the period of year for the contents of what I've been able to do for you on outings and so forth. I don't think there's very much else that I can talk on really, but it's good to see people support, and we need the support to keep the club going. That's all I think I need to say. Thanks, David.
All right, Gary. Well, again, your commitment to the club over a very long period of time has been extraordinary, and particularly in relation to in charge of activities, and it's of inestimable value that you can keep coming up with activities that we can attend. So we're all very grateful for your efforts, which includes, of course, making sure everything's right for lunch and that they've got the right numbers and everything else. So Gary, you're an absolute superstar. That's the way I describe it. A superstar. I just mentioned that Graham Ratton and John Metcalf have done a super job on the history of the club. They've worked on it before. What's going to happen is, first of all, it is on the website, and Bruce has been able to do that, put it on the website. so it is there, but a hard copy will be available for you to have a look at the next meeting, but there's going to be an official launch by Graham and John at our 40th birthday lunch of the history, and it's a superb work, and it will then be available for all members to purchase in hard copy form if they'd like to have it. So look forward to hearing more about that history. Interesting that at one stage we were around about 140 members in the early days. So it'd be nice to get the graph going up again, and there are good signs that that's happening. I think if we now move to the annual financial statement, which is attached to the newsletter, we thank our Treasurer for ensuring that everything is right as far as the finances of the club are concerned and the recording of our finances. Bert, would you like to move that report be received?
Yes, I move.
Is that seconded? Yes. Seconded, Colin Stiles. Those in favour? Carried. Is there anything you want to add, Bert, to what's in the report?
Not really, except in the report it mentioned that our petty cash is $100. It's in fact started at 100, but then there was 76 spent, left 34, so it was 34 at the end, not 100.
Okay, thank you. That'll be noted. We have to set the annual membership fee. The committee has considered this. Our capitation fee to headquarters has increased, and the committee recommends that the fee for this coming year be $55. Can I have a motion? Robert, thank you. Seconded? Seconded, John Doherty. Is there any discussion about that? Those in favour? Those against? Carried. So the membership fee for this coming year will be $55, and details invoice will be sent out. Bert's informed me that the way the bank's now operating, as from, when is it?
3rd of June.
3rd of June, cheques are out, and it's either cash or account transfer. So that's something that you'll have to bear in mind. All right.
That's not just our bank, it's all banks.
All right. Our secretary has kindly agreed to be returning officer for the election of the management committee, which is what we now have to attend to. So I formally appoint our secretary, Colin Stiles, as the returning officer for the election of the management committee. Colin, could you tell us the nominations that have been received? Thanks.
Okay, I've got 10 pieces of paper in my hand. The first one says Andy Walsh-Greeter. I've got another one that says Robert Urbacher, membership officer. I have one here saying hospitality historian Graham Ratton. I've got one here saying external activities, guess who? Gary Papworth. Another one, treasurer Bert Berryman, up the street from me. And we've got me, Colin Stiles. Newsletter, website and Superman, Bruce Bazant. Congratulations, just got to learn how to fly. Here we go. This is David Von Almaner and a fine talk too. This one here I can scarcely read. Who could this be? The lucky man who's drawn the short straw. President John Doherty. Vice President. Let's see, where is he? Can I see him? Oh, there he is. Michael Francis. Mayor. I told you might turn up to committee meetings as well from time to time.
So they are the nominations. Are there any nominations from the floor? There being no nominations from the floor, I declare that those members are appointed as members of the management committee and to the respective positions for which they have nominated. Would everyone like to confirm their appointment in the usual way? All right, if the new committee could come up here and we'll formally induct you, and I'll hand over this very heavy burden to the new president.
What's these cords? You stand on the screen, it'll be captured.
Oh, okay.
Come within the screen, otherwise it won't be captured on the
Yeah,
camera.
we just want to get you all on the screen. We can't go anywhere without our treasurer.
You sit at the back.
We need you
Get a chair and sit.
on this side of the microphone.
Yeah, right, Bert?
Stand here.
Just come around here.
Come around a bit.
Yep.
You sit at the front with your legs crossed, Bert, on the footy.
Yeah.
The two of you need to come in.
We need to come in.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll be able to take a picture off the screen.
Yeah, we'll get one on the screen
Yeah.
too. Okay.
No, you have to come in. Red
Come in,
shirt.
David.
David, you gotta come in, sweetheart.
Over there? Over here.
It's squeezing next to Brian.
Yeah,
Yep.
Flip over that corner there.
and if you could
Any number
be
of
in a little bit.
Come with us.
Okay,
hiding anyone?
Anyway, I don't
Yes.
think we can see them.
we're good now.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay. Good.
Hang on.
Let's take two.
All done?
Take two. Take two. Thank you.
Okay. I formally induct.
Hang
Are we up?
on.
They're all done?
No, there's another.
If you just look at the camera and smile, I can take a still off the camera
Yeah.
later.
Right.
Okay.
Jan will do it as well.
Oh, that's a better way.
Okay. So I formally induct and present to the members the Management Committee for 2023-24, and I'll be the feather duster past president as a member of that committee, and I pass the
Thanks, David.
the burdens of office to our new president. And the last thing I'll do before I hand over to him to introduce our guest speaker, etc., is we've got to have a sing-song. And Noel, we'll get the books out, and we'll get the piano going.
Go back to our seats.
Go back to our seats.
Better stay there and sing. Good?
So we get our books, and we're going to start with John Brown's Body. Everyone got a book?
I want you to sing up, brother.
Guys up.
John Brown's body lies a rolling in the grave. John Brown's body lies a rolling in the grave. John Brown's body lies a rolling in the grave, and his soul goes marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. And his soul goes marching on. The stars of heaven are looking kindly down. The stars of heaven are looking kindly down on the grave of old John Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. And his soul goes marching on. He's going to be a soldier in the army of the Lord. He's going to be a soldier in the army of the Lord. He's going to be a soldier in the army of the Lord. And his soul goes marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. And his soul goes marching on.
Now, what's Men of Harlech? Men of Harlech?
Men of Harlech, do you hear like rushing billow, when the waves surging for battles, 'tis the sound, 'tis the tramp of Saxon foemen, Saxon spear and Saxon bowman, be that nice lines of yarn, laid out underground. Loose the foes asunder, land we conquer under, the blessed sky, the right on high, shall close his cross in thunder. Onward 'tis our country leads us, he is bravest, he who leads us. On the sun and rightly hails us,
Great. And the Vicar of Bray. The Vicar of Bray.
Keep singing on.
golden days when loyalty came unbound. A zealous high churchman was life, and so I got preferred. Be my flock I never missed, were my blood unwanted. And then those who do resist and touch the Lord's anointed. This is all that I'll maintain until my dying days, sir. That soul and the King shall reign, I'll be a vicar of praise, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Could I, just before I hand over to our President, could I just mention that Graham Ratton has brought to my attention the Heidelberg Choral Society concert on the 1st of April at Sacred Heart Church, Catholic Church, Cotham Road Q, corner of Glenferrie Road. Heraldic Handel and magnificent Mozart. So you can't do much better than that. You can get tickets online through their website, and we've signed up for it, and certainly we would urge anyone interested in great choral music to see if they can make it. So I have great pleasure now in handing over. I'll take my little bit of cake, thanks Graham, handing over to our President.
This won't get recorded on that.
Do I hang on this? Just hang on, or put on this? Hold it.
Bruce.
I want to say too, I want to talk about some bits and pieces when
Oh,
you're
yeah,
right.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Andrew, thanks everybody. Before I say anything at all, I just want to confirm something with Andrew. Do we have another guest here today, Andrew? Paul Carter?
We do.
We do. Where are you, Paul? Yeah, just stand up and so everybody can see it. Please make Paul welcome. Philip Carter, I beg your pardon. Andy mentioned something before, I didn't quite get it. It's so I'm showing my deafness. But I'm sorry I missed you earlier, Philip, and congratulations that you're here. We're pleased that you're here, and hopefully you'll stay on and become a member. To the Committee of Management, the outgoing Committee of Management, some of who are still with us, thank you for all the work you've been doing over the last 12 months, and some of you have been there beforehand, and particularly our President David. Been difficult times the last couple of years through COVID and such, and to be able to maintain the focus for the club and to try and bring new people in, the people who are working very hard. David's mentioned his report this morning. Gary wants to say a little bit too, but I just think it'd be remiss of me not to record my thanks and appreciation to our President and also the committee, the outgoing committee, for the work that they've done, magnificent leadership over the last 12 months particularly, and I'm so pleased to be involved. And I came on board about 2.5 years ago. David asked me to come along and talk about life as day in a magistrate's life sort of thing anyway. I was so impressed by it, he invited me to stay on, and I'm so glad I did. And it's sort of, can't believe I'm standing here with the chains of office around me, but anyway, here we are. So, whether you like it or not, you've got me for the next 12 months or so, so let's try and enjoy ourselves and maintain the dynamic that the committee, led by David, as I say, has maintained in the last 12 months. We keep that going, foster the club, stay together, look after one another, try and bring some more people in, and generally it's about being together, fellowship and that sort of thing, and we can maintain that and look after one another. So that's my focus for today. Now, before I go on and introduce our speaker, I think he's here. If he's here, I'd ask him to put his hand up. He may be up the back. He's not here. All right, not yet. Anyway, that's no, never mind at all. He's due about now. But Gary, you wanted to say a few things, so I'll invite you up, Gary.
Thank you.
And we'll go from there. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another year of Probus. This is my 18th in the job. And I can let you into something too now. I have given 12 months' notice to the job. Unfortunately, I think my time is getting that I need a little bit of a rest. I know it's been pretty hard. They could tell me I was at the committee meeting last month and I was in tears because I didn't want to give it away, but it's time to do so, I think. But I've really enjoyed over the 18 years that I've been doing this, and I hope everybody or whoever takes over will do as good a job as what I've tried to do, and even better. And I hope that this club is still rolling. I'll still be here and support it as much as I possibly can. This month, Wednesday, March the 22nd, is the combined Probus barbecue at Springthorpe Village, number 8 Pottage Circuit McLeod at 12 p.m. Cost is $15. Now, I've got quite a few people on the list that haven't paid. It's got to be paid today, unfortunately, or you will not be catered for on the day, because we have got quite a lot from the other two clubs, and we don't want to over cater because we have too much stuff left over and we can't afford to do that. So please make sure it's up there on the table, envelopes, put the money in the envelope, the $15 or whatever it is today, please. And you will need to bring with you a knife, fork, plate and glass and a little light refreshment on the day. Okay, Wednesday, April the 19th, I did advertise in the newsletter for a bus trip. Now, I've cancelled it for the simple reason the next month we have got the anniversary luncheon. So next month, April the 19th, has been cancelled, okay? I think there was 2 or 3 people on the list. I will be running it later in the year for those who are still interested in wanting to go. I think it'll be about springtime. There was 2-3 places that we were going, and it would have cost you $45. But though then I don't know whether the prices will be up or not, I'm not sure. Now, Tuesday, May the 9th, is the Heidelberg Pros Club's 40th anniversary meeting and lunch, to be held at St George's Church, 46 Warncliffe Road, Ivanhoe East, at 12 p.m. It may be a little bit earlier than that the meeting starts. I'm not sure on that. I'll let you know anyway next month. Yeah. The cost is $55 per person. This has to be paid at the April meeting for catering purposes, and also so we have to pay for the hall as well. Money in an envelope with your details on the front, thanks. And please don't forget, the main meeting will not be held here. It'll be down at the St George's in East Ivanhoe, okay? I have been advertising on June the 31st till August the 9th. There is a 10-day trip to Cooperative, which they're still looking for more people to go on. Those interested, please contact Group Link Direct and the info for their booking. Also, please, in big letters, don't forget your lunch for next month. Please put your name on the list, on the table at the front there, and put your name and numbers are going on the sheet. And if you're not able to come, please just give me a ring and I will cancel you off, okay? Also, you find up on the table, this is a message from Group Link. It's a tours program for 2023. We are not personally joining all these tours, but if anyone would like to, you've only got to Group Link and they will organise and you will join in on the tours, and they are really good tours too. So anyone's interested with that. Can I leave you with just a little thought for today? Okay. As I was laying around pondering on problems of the world, I realised at my age I didn't really give a rat's anymore. I won't say the other word, there's ladies here today. If walking is good for your health, the postman would be immortal. A whale swims all day, eats fish, drinks water, but is still fat. A rabbit runs and hops and only lives 15 years, while a tortoise doesn't run and does mostly nothing, yet it lives for 150 years. And you tell me to exercise? I don't think so. Just grant me the sensibility of forget the people I ever liked, the good fortune to remember, and the ones I do, and the eyesight to tell the difference. Now that I'm older, here's what I've discovered. Number one, I started out with nothing and I still have most of it. 2, my wild oats are mostly endured with prunes and all bran. Number 3, I finally got my head together and now my body is falling apart. Number 4, funny, I don't remember being absent-minded. Number 5, funny, I don't remember being absent-minded. 6, if all is not lost, then where the heck is it? 7, it was a whole lot easier to get older than to get wiser. Number 8, some days you're the top dog, some days you're the lamppost. Number 9, I wish the buck really did stop here. I sure couldn't, a few of them. 10, kids in the back seat cause accidents. 11, accidents in the back seat cause kids. 12, it's hard to make a comeback when it hasn't been anywhere. 13, the world only beats a path to your door when you're in the bathroom. 14, if God wants me to touch my toes, he'd put them on my knees. 15, when I'm finally holding all the right cards, everyone wants to play chess. 16, it's not hard to meet expenses. They're everywhere. The only difference between a rut and a grave is the depth. 18, these days I spend a lot of time thinking about the hereafter. I go somewhere to get something and then wonder what I'm here for. 19, I don't remember being absent-minded. Thanks everybody, and don't forget to put your names down for next month and to pay the bill today. Thank you.
Wonderful, Gaz. That's very, very good. I didn't realise that in 12 months' time you're thinking about moving on. Personally, I hope that in the next 12 months we can still maintain, have a lot of fun together. You have very big shoes to fill, and one would hope at the end of 12 months that if circumstance provides for it, you'll be in a position to rethink moving on from activities, and we'd like to keep you on board, there's no doubt about that. Where we're going to find another Gary Papworth. So anyway, round of applause for Gary. Now, many years ago, when I was a young fella, I had the privilege of watching one of the great pioneers of Australian television, a fellow named Hector Crawford, as we all did. And we remember what an institution Crawford Productions was, and some of the great television shows we had the privilege to watch. And they were really pioneers in the development of the TV, and we grew up with it. A bit like Princess Panda and Happy Hammond and that sort of thing. I'm not sure there's an association there, but Hector Crawford was very well known. There's a gentleman standing at the back of the room here. If you remember Hector Crawford, he had the most magnificent crop of hair. Brushed back, golden flaxen hair, silver hair. It almost looked like a helmet. And if I'm not mistaken, the man at the back of the... he has a look about him with the Crawford look. I could be wrong, but it could be Ian Crawford. Is that you, Ian, down there? And please make Ian welcome. Give him a clap and invite him here. Come up, Ian.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Wonderful. Come over.
Good.
I'll just have a quick word.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be with us today. And we're really looking forward to your presentation. We'll leave that there for you, so don't forget that. That's yours.
Good.
You've spoken to Progress Clubs before, as I understand it.
A couple of hundred times.
All right. Well,
I didn't know there were so many clubs in Australia.
There we go. Well, we won't. This is our annual general meeting. We've just had that, and our past president sits over there, David Jones. Until about 15 minutes ago, David was our president.
Right.
I'm now in the fortunate position where I'm now the president. So, but we welcome you here today. We're very much looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Please make him welcome.
That's fine. That's fine.
This is a microphone, so
Okay.
is it okay if we sort of just clip it onto
Yeah,
your
that's fine.
shirt?
Yeah.
If that's okay. You can hold it, but this will probably be more convenient for you. You've got no present visual audio, you just got to talk.
Just going to talk.
That's okay. That's for the room, and that's for the...
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It is morning, yes. And now, can you all hear me up the back okay?
Yes.
Which reminds me, I was at the doctor the other day. He's a good friend of the family, and when I was talking to him, I said, look, I've got a real problem with my wife. She's not hearing me as she used to hear me. I said, okay, well, the doctor said, well, look, get her to come and see me. I said, fine, I'll do that. So I'm going out the door. He said, look, just a moment. When you get home, call out from a long way away. If she can't hear you, go closer. Then give me a ring and let me know how close you had to be before she could hear you. Fine. I go home, open the front door. Hi, darling, what's for dinner? Not a sound. I go into the dining room. Hi, darling, what's for dinner? Still nothing. I go into the kitchen. There she is, her back is to me. Hi, darling, what's for dinner? For the third time, chicken. So I'm going to be reading this speech today. If I relied on my memory, we'd still be here tomorrow. So here we go. I'm reading the speech, and questions afterwards by all means. Back in radio days, Crawford was the largest drama company in Victoria. Then once television took over, it became the largest drama company in Australia. The company was started by my uncle, Hector Crawford, and his sister, my mother, Dorothy. I guess it would be said I was the first Crawford production. and I eventually became managing director of Crawford's until Hector and I sold our shares in 1988. Today, television is such a part of our lives with massive paid streaming and unpaid streaming, free to air. Before 1966, though, there was no television. And so at the beginning, no one knew how to operate a television camera, how to train actors for television, how to put together a program, how to write one, how to sell one to one of the 2 brand new networks. So today my story is about my Crawford family's pioneering, how we had the great good fortune to be part of the beginning of television. I was born 89 years ago. My parents separated soon after, so I lived with my grandparents till I was about 15, then moved in with Hector and his lovely wife Glenda, who was known to Australians as Glenda Raymond, the wonderful coloratura soprano. Now he was a dream come true. I'd been secretly head over heels in love with the gorgeous Glenda since I was in primary school. And now suddenly she was the mother I'd never really had. My life became so exciting. Imagine pancakes every day for breakfast, in bed. In 1939, when I was about 5, my real mother, Dorothy, became the first woman announcer on the ABC. As their strict policy at the time was no married women, she would have been immediately sacked had they learned she was not only married but with a child. So I was brought up to call her Mignon, never ever mother or mum. At the same time, Hector, mad on music, managed to con the Melbourne Conservatorium Orchestra into performing a little concert in the Botanical Gardens for him. And he chose to call it Music for the People. The concerts were held on a temporary stage. Regulations forbade any permanent building in the gardens. Throughout each summer, a small team of workmen would spend 2 weeks setting up the stage and the dirty big roof and the huge tent behind it. And then Heck and the orchestra would come along and perform. And then the labourers would come back, tear the thing down, and then spend the next 2 weeks lifting it up again. This went on for 21 years, until in 1959 the Sydney Mire Music Bowl was built outside the gardens, given by Sir Sydney Mire to the people of Victoria. Heck had been keen to have a music bowl built within the Botanical Gardens as a commemoration to Nellie Melba, but of course that was never to be. Back in 1939, the very first performance of Music for the People attracted an audience of 5,000. In 1967, a then world record audience of 240,000, 250,000 people, watched Music for the People when it starred the Seekers. There are really 2 alternative stories I can tell you about the last days of radio and the early days of television. One would be about the business and the finance and the power and the abuse of power of such moguls as Sir Frank Packer, Kerry Packer and Sir Reginald Lancet. The other is the inside story of Crawford's, of our programs, our staff and our actors. And it's this inside story I'd like to tell you about today. Of course, it's a rather personal story, one which has got to be told from my point of view. Back in 1948, I entered the fabulous world of radio drama at Crawford's. At age 15, I was given the Saturday morning job of deliveries around the city, which I did on my bicycle. After the first Saturday, Hector paid me 2 shillings for the morning. I was sure he'd said I was going to be paid 2 shillings an hour. It was a short, sharp argument and I got back on my bike. All went well. It's amazing how quiet the city was in those days. Until one Saturday morning I was cycling down the Collins Street Hill, down towards the Swanson Street, towards Melbourne Town Hall. Nothing was ahead of me except a long way away, a woman starting to jaywalk across Collins Street. Well, I moved to my left, I was sure she'd see me and stop and I'd go past her, but no, we both met in the gutter and I broke her ankle. And what's worse, it turned out to be my first brush with the law. She was the wife of the police sergeant at Elsonwick. Of course, Hector decided I was a clear and present danger to every pedestrian in the city, so on Saturday mornings I became a rodeo boy, printing scripts. With gobs of black ink all over the place and frequent spillages, I made dirty work for myself, but for me it was Christmas. Until one Saturday morning, Hector turned up unexpectedly, catching me and Peter the office boy playing cricket in the corridor. Quickly he hauled us into his office, leant back in his chair, and reminded Peter if he had no more work to do, he would get more from the secretary. And no more cricket, he said, as he sent Peter out of the room. Now this didn't suit me at all. Now I had to stand in front of his huge desk having to face the music alone. And he sacked me. At my grandparents' place in Eastern Kilda, war broke out. Violent domestic scenes took place throughout the entire weekend until the family eventually managed to force Hector to reinstate me. After the trick, a stint in Nasho at Pucker and a year at an advertising agency, in 1953, 20 years old, I joined Crawford's full-time, choosing music and playing it into our radio drama productions. At this time, Dorothy was producing 44 quarter hours of radio dramas each week, 8 each weekday and 4 on a Saturday morning. Then on Sunday, she'd edit the next 44 scripts ready for typing and recording. Hector, always looking for new program ideas, had been approached by Victoria's Police Commissioner to see if radio could be used to change the public's really poor perception of the Victoria Police. So Dorothy had started producing a police detective program, good old cops and robbers stuff, sponsored by the Victoria Police, D24. From the beginning, Roland Strong had been engaged on a permanent basis to act as narrator on many of our productions. Roland was obsessed with police work, particularly murder cases, so Dorothy got him to write the first episode of D24. He and Dorothy had always had an excellent working relationship, that he and she also had a long-term and unruly clandestine affair, punctuated by short-term marriages to others, did nothing to dampen his success as head writer and often co-producer of the long-running D24. Eventually they did marry. The program became extremely popular and we had remarkable assistance from the police. They provided us with actual case files as well as on-the-spot help from 2 detectives seconded to Crawford's. We never had studios of our own. We just hired them. All the preliminary work we did in 2 rented rooms in Little Collins Street, which had started life as an air raid shelter during the Second World War. In 1952, Hector opened the Crawford School of Broadcasting, partly as a moneymaker, but also to help swell the number of actors we needed. Notable students were Noel Ferrier and Graham Kennedy. To make way for the school, Hector moved the typing pool to Burke Street, hiring the first floor above Station 3UZ. This was at the other end of the aptly nicknamed Lav Lane, where our only toilets were. If it was raining when you had to go to the toilet, you took the standby umbrella. Sturdy stuff, going to our outdoor roofless toilet. From Lav Lane, a spiral staircase led upstairs into our new typing pool, with the disciplinarian Marge Keane in charge. Soon after I was with the company, 17-year-old David Lee joined as an office boy. Full of pranks, full of fun, and still a great friend after 65 years. David's career almost ended immediately when, accidentally according to him, he happened to roll a large metal rubbish bin down the spiral staircase just as Marge Keane was coming up with some scripts. Marge, bin, scripts and rubbish all exploded into Lab Lane in an embarrassing heap. A dizzy, battered and furious Marge reported David to Hector, who immediately got stuck into David. Hector leant back in his chair as he got stuck into him, but for once the chair's wheels took over, and Hector Crawford slowly slid right out of sight under his desk. David left the room in hysterics. The subject of the bin was never mentioned again. By 1954, television was only 2 years away, with the danger of radio drama collapsing entirely. So Hector hired St James Old Cathedral Hall in West Melbourne to form the Crawford TV Workshop. I was put in charge of preparing this new school, which would teach actors and announcers about television, while Hector and Dorothy went overseas to study the ways of television in the United States and Britain. We couldn't afford a proper television camera, so we ended up with a cheap one which had been made for looking into furnaces. Together with a separate large viewfinder, the whole thing weighed about 40 kilograms, which we stuck on a heavy metal base, then on a tripod, then on wheels, with a long board running from front to back. At the front end of it were counterweights, at the back end a kitchen chair which the cameraman sat on. Crazy, but it worked. Sorry, look, I've just rearranged things. Hang on a second, folks. Okay, all too soon, 1956 was upon us, with the Melbourne Olympics a great opening occasion for TV stations, and immediately radio drama collapsed. In the short lifetime of Crawford as a radio producer, only 11 years, the company had made over 12,000 quarter hours of drama and more than 300 hours of musical and musical dramatic programs. Now, quizzes kept us in business as we tried to sell drama, to any TV station. Our problem was that an hour's episode cost thousands of pounds to produce, whereas a network could get the best of the United States and English programs for as little as £100, a classic case of what's called dumping. But an early television program we managed to sell was Take That, a copy of the old radio program, Yes What. In those early days, we weren't allowed to direct TV programs. I directed the movements of cameras and actors, while Channel 7's director Alex Emanuel actually pushed the buttons. The comedy featured, and it was a children's comedy, the comedy featured constant smoke bombs and explosions delightedly arranged by the station's lighting department, while we supplied the horrendous sound effects to coincide with the flash and the smoke. However, many episodes were interrupted by firemen trying to knock down the studio door, as Alex had forgotten to let them know about the smoke bombs. Consequently, Channel 7 was fined a huge amount of £25 a time. On the odd occasion when a whole episode went by without a smoke bomb, more than once, smoke from Alex's pipe set the control room fire alarm going. By now, Channel 7 were telecasting music for the people, but with no income for us, despite the fact that Dorothy was producing the telecast. To try and get some music on television and be paid for it, we devised This Is Ballet, a 15-minute pilot which Hector planned to flog to Channel 9. We rehearsed our heads off. To have to go to air live with our one and only Heath Robinson affair of a camera was a daunting prospect. It was manned by me. To show the dancers' movements, we had to have the camera move in and out amongst the dancers with close-up of heads, hands, feet, everything. Came the great day, and crew and cast waited in the studio while Hector ushered the big knobs of Channel 9 into our viewing room. The group included Norm Spencer, the talented producer in Melbourne Tonight, which had been to air just for 4 months. Nerves jangling, we waited for our cue from Hector, and then we were away, and not a thing went wrong. After we finished, Norm Spencer asked me to take him into the studio to see how we'd achieved such a performance with just one camera. What equipment were we using? Highly embarrassed, I showed him our equipment. He was truly astounded. And he asked me if I'd like to spend a couple of evenings backstage in Melbourne Tonight. Oh, of course, next night I was in Bendigo Street, with Norm immediately putting me on Graham Kennedy's camera during rehearsal. I must have done okay, for he got me to stay on that camera for the whole show. And so opportunity had come my way in the most extraordinary manner. Though I always still worked full-time at Crawford's, I was to spend the next 7 years on In Melbourne Tonight, always the only freelance cameraman, and always on Graham's camera, 5 nights a week. Graham was an amazing and intriguing talent. Each night before he went in front of the cameras, he was almost shaking with nerves, needing copious cups of tea to help him through. Funnily enough, my wife Carol often made the tea. She was working at that time on our quiz Raising a Husband, compared by Alwyn Kurtz, which went to air just before In Melbourne Tonight on Thursday nights. Graham was so shy and introverted. On many occasions he came to parties hosted by Heck and Glenda at their home in Canterbury, where all the guests joined in the craze of charades, all except Graham, who preferred to sit in the background watching the battle from a safe distance. But from the moment Graham came on set into the spotlight, he'd suddenly become the brilliant compere and comedian we all knew. To have such friends as Graham, Bert and Patty Newton, Pete Smith, Denise Drysdale, Philip Brady, Princess Panda, as well as the camera crew and technicians, was great fun and always exciting. Meantime, Hector persuaded Channel 7 to buy Consider Your Verdict, a TV version of our old radio program. A static production with only one set, we were able to make it for some £500 per 1 hour episode using Seven's Fitzroy Teletheatre. Barristers' wives were taken by radio actors, including Dorothy's second husband, Roland Strong, who was my stepfather and also my wife's uncle, also incestuous. Though the barristers' questions were fully scripted, witnesses' replies were written in such a way that the actors had to use their own words. In this way, rehearsal and recording times could be kept to a minimum. Virtually every Victorian actor was used on the production and it provided a start for hundreds. The resulting shortage of actors became a huge problem for Dorothy, and she started choosing people off the street to act as witnesses. Having to use their own words covered their gross shortcomings as actors. Because of time restrictions, recordings of Consider Your Verdict episodes had to continue no matter what the problem. When Rain on the Teletheatre's tin roof threatened to disrupt production, I'd get the floor manager to hold up a sign to the judge, and the judge would then interrupt, witness, will you please speak up? The rain on the roof, you know. We often use real barristers as judges. One was Eugene Gorman, later Sir Eugene, mad on the races. We always had to record Consider Your Verdict on Saturday afternoons, and countless times we had to re-record the segment, the audio engineer able to hear Eugene Gorman's radio under his desk whispering the race broadcast. 160 episodes were made during its 4-year run, and for the last 30 or so, we were given an extra half-hour production time so we could produce an opening scene or teaser for the program. Each episode now started with a scene setting up the drama to come. Sometimes we see the actual crime take place, murder, robbery, whatever. And we had not the faintest idea that these little clips were preparing Dorothy and me for another program, one which would sweep Australia to become the most popular drama ever on Australian television. It was Homicide. But to make a pilot episode of Homicide, Heck had to mortgage his house while he and Dorothy went without salary until after it had been sold. For more than 12 months, Hector hawked Homicide around Australia trying to get Sun Network or other to pick it up. And it was only by his constant visit to Channel 7 that the bosses eventually bought it, so it seemed, just to get him off their backs. No one, not even Hector, had the faintest idea it would turn out to be the huge success it was, with ratings unprecedented for any drama, let alone a homegrown one. Before Consider Your Verdict and Homicide went to air, viewers had been brought up on American crime dramas which glamorised murder and violence, while our shows were based on real down-to-earth cases told in a down-to-earth manner. And viewers who had known only American accents on their screen in their crime shows now enjoyed real Aussie actors with real Aussie accents. Frank Packer, chairman of Nine, said Homicide wouldn't have a chance against his top-rating show, Dick Van Dyke. But the ratings enjoyed by Homicide grew to extraordinary heights, an absolute total tearaway success, and Dick Van Dyke was shoveled off to another time slot to save it from an early grave. Destined to have some 30 continuing detective roles during his 12-year lifetime, Homicide began with 4 regular actors, Irishman Jack Fagan playing the inspector, and Leonard Teal, George Mallaby, and Terry McDermott, the 3 detectives. But considering the real police homicide department sported in excess of 50 detectives at that time, early criticism that ours was the loneliest homicide office in the world was not undeserved. But the public lapped it up, so much so that after its first year, actor Terry McDermott insisted on a huge salary increase on the grounds that it was his efforts, along with those of Jack, Len, and George, which had brought Homicide such success. Here was our first major decision. Would we replace Terry or submit to his demands? Perhaps Terry was right. Perhaps the whole show would fold if the identity of the beloved regulars had changed. But we took the chance and replaced Terry, though not without making the most of it. His final episode featured his death, all in the line of duty, mark you. It's heavily publicised, the consequent ratings leapt to new heights. The program was on a roll. In trying to find a replacement for McDermott, Dorothy came across the photo of an Adelaide actor, Terry Stapleton. At the time, she was spending Christmas with the rest of the Crawford family, all of us, in Lorne, in Victoria's southwest. So we got Ian Jones of Ned Kelly fame, our top film director, to drive Terry to Lorne. Ian commandeered one of the company's 2 police cars, using the filming of Homicide to pick him up from the airport. Travelling along the long highway from Essendon, Ian and Terry were suddenly overtaken by a police motorcyclist. Sirens screaming, lights flashing. The cop forced them to pull over. When asked why they were driving a police car, Ian explained it was on loan to Crawford for homicide and all that. Even so, the cop ordered them to get off the road pronto. Ronald Ryan, already in jail for murder, had escaped from Pedrick that day, shooting a prison warder on the way. And all police cars would be kept off major roads so that Ryan wouldn't duck off into side streets. Quickly, Ian got off the road and sat still for the required 30 minutes. Eventually, he delivered Terry to Lorne to be auditioned for a detective role by my mother, Dorothy. At the best of times, Terry was a rather shy, cautious character. After his nerve-wracking trip to Lorne, he was in no mood for further shocks. But he hadn't figured on being auditioned in Dorothy's bedroom, not only by Dorothy, but in the presence of her husband, Roland Strong, Hector, Glenda, Ian Jones, my wife and me, with various Crawford children playing outside the door. Terry missed out on the job probably due to this series of shocks, but was to become one of Australia's foremost television writers and a leader at Crawford's. From the commencement of Homicide, his detectives became the pop stars of their time. cover page stuff on TV Work and TV Week and TV Times, with huge crowds milling about wherever they were filming. A particular favourite was Leonard Teal. Dedicated, tough, extremely hard-working, Len had a height problem. The minimum height at that time for police was 5 feet 10 inches. Len was 2 inches shorter. To hide this lack of height, directors would choose locations for interviews so that Len could be positioned above his witness. In the street, for instance, if the camera had tilted down, it would have shown the witness standing in the gutter while Len harangued from atop the curb. Soon, Len was carrying around a spade, keen to preserve his image in country locations where curbs and gutters were non-existent. There he dig little holes for his witness to stand in, while he stood on the top of the mound of earth he just dug. Eventually, sick of constant digging, he stacked bricks in the boot of his car, and he'd get out the bricks and stand on the pile of bricks. Image became very important for Len. While not the best of drivers, he joined the local racing car club, much to the delight of its members, who immediately got huge loads of publicity they had only have dreamt of. One day the film crew were shooting yet another car chase sequence. The criminal, a stunt extra named Fred, was driving a car destined to run out of control over a cliff. Now Crawford weren't about to wreck a good car, so they bought a beat-up, hopeless old thing to send over the cliff. Meantime, a series of shots showing a police car chasing this wreck had to be completed. Director George Miller set up a simple long shot, which only had to show the police car chasing the wreck from one side of the screen to the other, a distance of 40 metres. George called action, and the wreck trundled into shot, followed by the police car driven by Len. But as Len's car came into view, he gunned the accelerator, swept past the crew's car. A furious George Miller got stuck into Len. Shamefacedly, Len explained that Fred, the guy driving the clapped-out car, was the best driver in the club, and this was his one chance ever to be able to beat his rival. Later in his long homicide career, Len became so steeped in his role that the police image began to overflow into his private life. If he came across a car accident, nothing to do with filming, he'd stop and get out his notebook. Then he'd hurry across to take down the names and addresses of the drivers. but there was probably an ASIO operative taking down his own notes about Len, for it's recently become known that Leonard George Teal, AO, Officer of the Order of Australia, was in the 1950s a suspect on ASIO's huge list of actors with communistic leanings. Maybe the operative found out what Len did with his names and addresses because nobody else had any idea. Still, therein lay much of Len's success as the best-known homicide detective ever. He was totally consumed by his role. Soon, Channel 9 were approaching us to make a program for them, but Frank Packer insisted it couldn't be another police program. One was enough for Melbourne. So, trying a different genre, we put together a spy program called Hunter, starring Tony Ward. A sort of poor man's James Bond spy series, Hunter featured futuristic intercoms, automatically opening doors, and various devices for following cars and people around, all a bit before their time. With a storyline based loosely on ASIO's activities in Australia, Russian spies and all, it failed to make much of an impact. The public just didn't believe that such goings-on took place in Australia, despite memories of the spectacular defection of the Russian spy Petrov, while in Australia during the Cold War only a few years before. However, ratings began to pick up upon the introduction of a master Russian spy as a regular. Cragg, played by Gerard Kennedy, proved to be so popular, it wasn't long before we had Cragg defect to the West, and immediately the ratings climbed to a respectable 30%. But by this time, Hector had convinced Packer to stop production of Hunter, replacing it with a suburban police program to star Gerard Kennedy. Sir Frank was highly reluctant to make such a move. To replace a reasonably successful program with a totally untried one was just not what station owners did. But he eventually agreed, threatening Heck with disaster should the new program prove a flop. And so Division 4 was born. We had originally named the program Saints and Sinners, but when the St Kilda Council heard about it, they were totally shocked. It would besmirch the good name of St Kilda. Well, many people at that time would have thought it was already quite besmirched. They refused permission to even film in St Kilda unless the name was changed. So he presented a list of 40 names to Channel 9, all rejected. Then we sent a further 50 names, and finally they chose Div 4. We'd never heard of Div 4. Turns out I'd written in my left-handed scribble the suggestion D24, based on that old program. It was a new young trainee had typed up the list, never heard of D24, misread it and typed Div 4 by mistake. So out of a typo came a new name, Division 4. Starring the popular Gerard Kennedy, now converted to lead cop, Division 4 immediately struck gold. Shortly after its commencement, all hell broke loose when we arrived at Channel 9 one morning to find that Nine's director seconded to the program was ill and unable to direct the telecast. In extremis, Nine's management asked me if I thought I could possibly do it myself. Well, here was a heaven-sent opportunity which I grabbed with great gusto, and so began my ongoing career as a television director. It was during this period that Crawford started importing overseas artists to tour Australia. Celebrities such as Liberace, Henry Mancini and Glenn Campbell. All these artists became part of Hector and Glenda's large circle of friends, and dinner parties hosted by Glenda were riotous affairs, particularly with Liberace and his entourage. My wife remembers swapping beef stroganoff recipes with Liberace, who was a very good cook. I remember playing tennis at Hector's with Glenn Campbell. With these tours and with successful TV shows at both TV stations, our staff numbers increased so quickly we had to move to the older Fleet building in Collins Street, where we hired half the second floor. The majority of our employees started at the bottom as office boys and girls, but at the rate of more than one a week they were moving to trainee positions, learning to be script editors, boom operators, crowd controllers, truck drivers. One of the drivers became Heck's driver. Each morning he'd pick Heck up at Canterbury and drop him outside the older Fleet building in Collins Street. It was impossible to park there, so Glenda would ring the office just after he'd left, so that by the time he got there, there'd be a boy waiting to help him upstairs with his things. One morning Heck opened the door of the car to find yet another new boy standing by the curb. Heck grabbed his bag and a suit from the boot of the car and gave them to him, saying, "Follow me, fella." He led the way upstairs. Then he asked the boy to put his things in his room. The boy had no idea what he was talking about. So after some questioning, Heck's face went rather red on learning that the boy worked for a legal firm and was waiting in the street for a taxi. Our third major police, it happened 2 weeks later, exactly the same thing. Can't believe it. Still can't believe it. Our third major police program, Matlock Police, was born of a discussion between Hector and Sir Reginald Ansett, CEO of the newly formed Channel O. He wanted a police show of his own. This time it was a country police station. Early in Matlock production, Heck got a call from a highly disturbed Reg Ansett, who was appalled at the episode he'd just watched in his office straight after its production. He insisted Heck come to his office for a serious discussion, and as I directed the episode, I was summoned as well. Once there, we found he was outraged by a scene where a girl took off her jumper, dressed only in a very modest skirt and bra. When Heck said the scene was okay, Reg insisted he wouldn't allow his teenage daughters to see it was so salacious. Furthermore, the control board were never allowed to be shown at 7:30 p.m. Heck convinced him to show it to the airport, to the control board. They watched it, then let us know the episode was quite suitable for 7:30 viewing uncut. Reg went on and on about the likely effect of the scene on the youth of Australia, particularly on his daughters, but to no avail. The board was adamant. Still, Reg made sure it went to air at 8:30. However, because of some careful Crawford publicity and a warning personally dictated by Reg, it got its highest rating ever. And the wording of his warning: this episode for adult viewing only due to near nudity. And everybody watched. By now we'd taken over all 3 floors of the older Fleet, but soon we were to go so big we had to move again. This time to the old Kodak building in Abbotsford, today part of Carlton United Breweries. But 2 days before the move was due, Melbourne was deluged with a record downpour, the worst storm in 40 years. In the city, cars were floating down Elizabeth Street. The older Fleet building was in the centre of all this, and inside, chaos reigned. Rushing round as usual, I happened to skid on the wet linoleum, 20 feet along the corridor, sliding gracefully on my backside, passing between lines of Crawford staff trying to mop up 3 inches of water. The company was getting out of the older Fleet, aptly named, just in time. After the move to Abbotsford, we built 2 studios where we shot Homicide and a detective series Ryan, both full-scale, all-film colour productions. Ryan was a private detective series starring Rod Mulliner. His sidekick was Pamela Stevenson, a fantastic artist who later became a highly qualified clinical psychologist, probably to cope with her husband, the eccentric Scottish comedian Billy Connolly. Ryan enjoyed only modest success, but foreign audiences lapped it up, outstripping the success of Homicide, Division 4 and Nutlock Police overseas. By this time, we at Crawford were producing 4 one-hour television dramas a week, a greater output than any other production house in the world, greater than Britain's Ealing Studios or America's MGM. And this was a one-time record which I don't think will ever be broken. Heck had a meeting at 7 to try and sell them a serial. They wouldn't have a bar of it, accusing Heck of living in the dark old ages of radio. But suddenly the landmark serial number 96 hit the top 10 ratings, and Hector's position on serials was immediately vindicated. One of our writers came up with the concept of a serial based on life in a television station. The Crawford Brains Trust thought the idea would have legs, and Ian Jones wrote the first episode. It was titled The Box. But we should never try with this new idea. 7 or 9. 10 was out of the question, for they already had their serial, number 96. After much discussion, we chose Channel 7. So Heck sent the script to their Sydney program manager, Glenn Kinging. Once he'd read it, Kinging thought the concept so outlandish that he sent it to his good mate at Channel 10, so they could both have a good old laugh about it over the phone. The phone call from his mate never came. To Kinging's surprise, 10 thought the box had something. To Kinging's dismay, it was highly successful. But for together, the box and number 96 put the 10 network at the top of the ratings for more than 2 years. King tried to keep his awful faux pas from his bosses to no avail. They were told the whole sad story by a delighted Channel 10 boss. One of the components of number 96's success was nudity, even full frontal. How Reg Anset's daughters coped, I have no idea. Perhaps Reg sent her to bed early on Tuesdays and Thursdays. At this time, Channel 7 started showing first run and repeat episodes of Homicide 3 nights a week, plus a massive 5 hours per week in the afternoon. Soon, 9 and 10 were doing the same thing with Divi 4 and Matlock. Hector greatly feared this development. The 3 networks were now showing 18 episodes of Crawford dramas a week, and he was convinced that this saturation couldn't continue, that it could well lead to a cancellation. And sure enough, the axe fell. Within a disastrous period of 3 months, all 4 of our programs were cancelled by the 3 networks. With our production schedule in tatters, we were appalled to have to retrench some 370 friends, including 35 of our talented writers, leaving only 80 people still on the staff. Hector, Dorothy, and particularly Glenda Crawford had included the staff in such a way they all felt part of the Crawford family. And it was distressing to have to say goodbye to many great friends who I'd worked with on a daily basis for 10 years or more. Desperate for new productions, anything to keep the company afloat, Heck made presentations to all 3 networks. Channel 9 was keen for a program which would open with a really strong central focus, like an accident or a disaster, to grab the audience right up front. Like a wall, said Heck. They jumped at the thought. So Heck brought up an idea that had been thought up a year before, but he stressed that back then, 7's Glenn King had rejected the whole notion. They didn't care. So Heck described an ordinary Melbourne family going about their business. They had no idea that the Second World War was about to start in 3 days' time, and the program would be how it affected them. Family members going off to war, blackouts, food shortages, and so on. And so The Sullivans was born. It was the most successful and lauded Australian serial of all time, with Lorraine Bailey and Paul Cronin becoming household names. And Channel 7, who'd rejected The Sullivans, poor old Glenn King had egg on his face once again. The initial sale was for 13 weeks, and after 6 weeks, it was already high time to negotiate a long-term contract with the network. Kerry Packer had just been appointed managing director of 9, and we heard he was a negotiator who worked on the premise that the world was trying to take the network and him down. To winkle out the cheats from the trustworthy was apparently Kerry's personal ambition, overriding all other methods and matters of negotiation. As a result of this rumour, Hector and I went to Sydney with some fear and trepidation. Once there, negotiations went back and forth. Packer continually threatening to cancel the Sullivans and renew his cheaper Young Doctors serial. Eventually the bottom line was reached. We desperately needed $54,000 a week just to recover our overheads, while Packer was insisting on not a cent more than $50,000. It was a stalemate, which Packer suddenly broke by saying, look, Hector, this is the moment. It's $50,000. You take $50,000 or I will cancel the show right now. After the longest pause in history, Heck said, we're accepting $50,000. Excellent, he said. In this case, you can have the $54,000 you wanted. Heck and I just couldn't believe it. We just sat there dumbfounded. Later we worked out that Kerry's final offer of $50,000 was maybe a way of learning the truth of our negotiating position. As we accepted even less than our bottom line, Kerry must have felt we were more or less telling the truth. An unusual man. Over the coming years, we were to move to even larger premises in Box Hill, were to make many other series. Cop Shop, Carson's Law, Lorraine Bailey once again, Bluey, Last of the Australians, Holiday Island, Solo One, Paul Cronin once again, Skyways, Bobby Dazzler with Johnny Farnham, Special Squad, Young Ramsey, the Emmy Award-winning Zoo Family, Henderson Kids, a beginning for Kylie Minogue and Nicole Kidman. Finally, a group of much-loved miniseries, All the Rivers Run, with the lovely Sigrid Thornton and her offsider John Waters. My Brother Tom, Who's Baby, Alice to Nowhere, The Far Country, Sigrid Thornton again, this time with the charming English actor Michael York, and The Flying Doctors. The Flying Doctors miniseries was so successful we extended it into a long-running series, which we filmed in the tiny far west Victorian township of Miniop, 50 kilometres from Horsham. The series became so popular in Holland that along with the air flight bookings, Dutch tourists were booking tickets in Holland for chartered buses that take them to the 700-kilometre return trip from Melbourne to Miniop to watch the filming. It had been a fabulous roller coaster ride for all the Crawford family. But now time was catching up with us. Hector had recovered from cancer of the voice box, only to find that his voice had been badly damaged. Dorothy had died after a sad battle with Parkinson's disease, and now Hector was aging fast. He and I decided to sell our shares in Crawford through Ariadne Limited, a company determined to break into television. Unfortunately, the purchase coincided with the 1987-88 stock market crash, and Ariadne was the worst hit company in all Australia. They soon had to sell to Bruce Gordon of Paramount Pacific, and from there, Crawford's went downhill. Until now, Crawford's is no more, except for one representative of Bruce Gordon selling DVDs of all our old programs. In 1991, Hector died. Glenda was to live another 10 years, perhaps a little regretful. In her early 20s, she'd had the world at her feet. She'd been lauded at home and abroad as the new Nellie Melba. But she cast a brilliant career aside in order to love and support Hector throughout his life. It had been a wonderful life for all of us in the industry since its commencement. And even today, of all the film and production crews working in Australia, 90% would count amongst their numbers at least a smattering of Crawford-trained employees. In these hundreds of people, the proud tradition commenced by us over 50 years ago lives on, as they continue to bring Australia's own ethos and culture to the Australian public by means of television and screen. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Do you have any questions? Yes.
Ian, thank you very much for a magnificent presentation about Australian product and Australian actors. But can you tell us what did your company do Skippy?
No.
And who were those other great Australian shows at the time which you were in competition with?
We were mainly in competition with, at that time, would have been ABC shows.
Yeah.
Because the ABC didn't want us.
Yep.
And quizzes.
Reg Grundy.
Reg Grundy, Sydney.
Yeah, Reg Grundy.
Yeah. He was a very good operator, Reg Grundy. He went overseas, took videotape recordings of all these overseas programs, came back and put them on the air here. Very well done. Very well.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, any more questions? Yes.
Yeah.
Hector Crawford sounds an extraordinary entrepreneur. Can you just give us a little thumbnail sketch of him?
Yeah. Okay. He was a choir boy at the one in the city,
St Paul's.
St Paul's, choir boy at St Paul's, and he went on from there. He studied the French horn and found it was too hard to play, and eventually became a conductor. He was a showman, a brilliant showman, rather than being a brilliant conductor. And there was a time when there was an argument going on between Hector and the orchestra, and it got to such an extent that the orchestra leader stood up and said, "Hector, if you keep at this, if you won't give us what we want, you will be upset because we will play to your beat." Which Hector got. But he was a brilliant showman. He was pushing each government when they came into office, because prior to their coming into office, they would say, "We're going to do these wonderful things for television, we're going to do this and this, and Australian content will be greater." And when they got into power, they did little. And so I was brought up by Hector to always vote for the one that was coming into power next, because he'd said, well, the one with the in power now are doing no good to us at all. So he was not given his just desserts for a long time by the government, the Australian government. Eventually he was, and got a couple of gongs, which were terrific. He then got cancer of the voice box, which was awful for him, really terrible, and his voice was hopeless afterwards. And he was adored by many of the community, mums and dads particularly, and all that had come from Music for the People. That did a tremendous amount for him in Australia, getting to know him, Victoria and Melbourne particularly. That's about it. Good.
Could I just say, add to that, I'm a member of the Heidelberg Choral Society,
yes,
formerly known as the Heidelberg City Choir, and on our records, Hector Crawford was the founder of that choir.
Wow.
And
well, that I didn't know. It's a new one for me. Thank you.
Strong and produced 3 classical and concert CD.
Right. That's fabulous, Brett. David.
Ian, I've been interested. I was chairman of the Australian Broadcasting Tribunal for 5.5 years, so yes, that tribunal succeeded the control board. Just interested in your thoughts about quotas. Now, there was an Australian content overall quota, yes, but there was also an Australian drama quota. Yes. And we're always in debate with the television networks about the quotas. Yes. How important was particularly the drama quota as far as promoting Australian drama? That's the first thing. The second area where we were in a lot of debate with them was in respect of children's television, yeah, particularly Australian-made, yeah, children's television. Yeah. Could you comment on both those?
Yes, we had little to do with the children's one, but with the drama quota, it was vital to us. I don't know that many programs would have been made at all if there had been no drama content. We always fought, of course, to have a greater content. The television station always fought to have a lesser content. It was expensive for them, but fair enough. And it was hugely important for us.
Yeah.
With children's, I think it was just as important in that case as well. Not that we had much to do with that at all, but it was terrific.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Any more?
Yes, I've never had so many questions. It's wonderful. What time's it?
Yeah, no, time for 1 or 2 more.
Yeah.
Yep.
What was happening with the Australian movie industry during these times that you've crossed over?
Yep. It had got going again, and part of that was the dramas on television. but it was always a problem between television manufacturer, television drama manufacturer, and the manufacturer of movies. It always appeared that the movie industry didn't want to know Crawford. They were the ones that were doing television and that sort of little stuff. So we had little to do with it. What did happen was that directors would leave our place and go and make movies. There was a problem with Heck. He was a little hidebound towards the end of things, and he had the opportunity to pick up movies which had been put together by a person on our staff, a director on our staff, and he didn't pick up the opportunity, and so the staff moved on. And there were a number of movies made by our directors who had moved on. That's the closest we ever came to it at the time. Any more questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Ian. You mentioned the ABC before in answering a previous question. Why was there not a closer relationship or a relationship at all between Crawford Productions and the ABC?
Yeah, they kept us apart. They didn't want to know. They had their own drama company, their own drama group, and that's what they wanted to stay there at that time. It did change later on, after we'd finished it. Any more questions? Okay, look, let's finish up.
Let's leave it there.
Yeah, could I just do one thing? There was the poor old Fred. He had really lost it, and his memory had gone, and he knew it. And his mate George used to come over to Fred's place, and they'd have a drink in the back garden. And on this day, Fred said, "Look, George, my memory is awful. Look, my wife and I, we went to dinner at a lovely restaurant just near your place. You've got to go and see it. Eat there. It's beautiful." He said, "Well, what's his name?" What's the thing that climbs up trees and fences and things? Ivy? Ivy, what's the name of that restaurant? Thanks very much, everybody. You've been a lovely audience.
Thank you, Wayne. I don't know about you, it just brought back to me, takes me a walk back in time, really, and I guess I don't really remember so much about the radio programs. I was sort of, I guess, born at that time in the towards the end of that, certainly the advent of television, and it just occurred to me, Ian, what pioneers Crawford Productions were, and the wonderful legacy that you've left, the employment you gave to so many people and gave them a head start and helped make I suppose the radio and the television industry what it is today, and it's a wonderful legacy left behind. And thank you so much for your presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're staying with us for lunch? Ian's staying with us for lunch, so please make him welcome and sit down and get to know him a bit more while he's here. Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, thank you, mate. All right, great. All right, we'll grab you that. Yep.